Mark Ramsey. I am talking to the one and only Jim Kerr. Jim Kerr, of course, is Vice President of Strategy for Triton Media. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? And it's not one and only because there's that Jim Kerr in New York as well as the lead singer Simple Minds. So I'm one of many.
Not familiar with either of them. Sorry, Jim.
We'll go with that. I'm the Jim Kerr.
Jim, you are at the center of change in the radio industry, especially along the digital front in a lot of ways. And I know you've been doing some thinking lately about what 2011 is going to bring the radio industry. Before we get into the details of that, can you talk to me a little bit about what you think is different in 2011 than 2010 and beyond? I mean, what new awarenesses are taking over now for the broadcasting industry?
Well, I think one of the things that's the most different and that we're going to face is that the external forces are finally going to come to bear on radio. And what I mean by that is a lot of things that radio can take for granted or kind of push to the side because it's just not in their face yet is going to start to get in their face. So a general manager who is sitting in a medium or small or even a large market and said, I don't even want to deal with digital because it's not affecting me. It's not, my sellers are going out and they're selling and the rates aren't changing because of digital. They're changing because of the economy. All of that kind of attitude is going to change because companies like Groupon, AOL with their patch initiative, all of these things are going to be knocking on the same doors that radio's knocking on, and it's suddenly going to be not a seller going in and saying, well, hey, I'm ready to sell you something, and forget digital or not even mentioning it won't come up. They're going to be going in, and 5 minutes before you'll have Groupon having called them and offered them $10,000 cash for a Groupon deal. It's that kind of change we're looking at. In very simple terms, digital is no longer just going to be that other thing that we have to think about. It's going to be in radio's face.
Yeah, and to be clear, Groupon is the outfit that offers the half-price deals to the people that are interested in half-price deals locally, and Patch is kind of that micro-local neighborhood news collection of sites,
right.
Large collection of sites built and sponsored by AOL. So all of these people are knocking on the doors of local merchants, right? All of these people are knocking on local merchant stores, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I said, it's one thing to say, I'll worry about it later, and it's in your neighborhood. It's another thing to say, worry about it later when you're going in after Groupon comes in, closes it.
Jim, for whatever reason, you just started pixelating there, and it's probably my fault. So answer that question one more time, where you said absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
This is the glories of the internet, right?
Yeah,
bandwidth.
It sure is.
No, it's gonna be one thing when you go in and go to a merchant and you sell them something. It's another and say, hey, I'm not even going to think about digital. It's another thing entirely when you go into a merchant and Groupon had walked in the door 5 minutes earlier with a deal that materially impacts the deal that you're hoping to get. It's radio's going to have digital in its face in 2011.
Okay, so what is some of the kind of the palpable things that you think, the trends that you think are shaping up for 2011 for radio?
Well, I think the most important trend really comes down to a trend that affects everybody from Facebook on down to, mom and pop sites. And that is that the listener database is going to be critical. Knowing who each and every one of your listeners are and being able to connect with them is going to be absolutely critical. The good news is that radio has had a very good, if shotgun-based database in the past. You've had databases that you get at concerts where people sign up. You've got email databases, and what you have basically are names and email addresses. Maybe you've got some demographic data. That is just not nearly going to be enough. In 2011, we're going to see radio finally rolling up its sleeves and getting down and knowing who each and every single one of these listeners are. It's the only way they're going to be able to compete with digital, where that's taken for granted.
And to be clear, when you talk about database, usually the terminology in radio is used to describe that 5, 10, maybe 15% if you're lucky of your audience that you happen to have an email address if you're lucky. You're describing more of a uniform, every listener is in one way, shape, or form registered, and you know data about every listener that they share with you willingly, or at least not against their will, right?
It really comes down to this. If you don't know who your listeners are, they're not going to matter. It's going to be more difficult to monetize them. Now we've got broad-based advertising at the spot level, which is maintaining up maybe a little, maybe down a little, but it's roughly like that. And you've got digital that continues to grow, significantly. All of that significant growth is only going to come when people know who those listeners are. On display, on the internet, they're targeting ads to people who have behaviors. If you like going outdoors, you're going to see ads that are with, skis. If you're thinking of buying a car, you'll see an ad about a car. That's the only really way that radio is going to be able to monetize, is to have that kind of knowledge of their listeners, who they are, what they like, those kinds of things. And there's a lot of ways you can monetize that. That's what's so great about it. You could do promotions and the kind of engagement things that we do through Triton Loyalty. You can do email marketing and deals through email. You can do social media marketing. All of these things. There's a wealth of ways to monetize each and every one of your users, your listeners, but you need to know who they are.
And you specifically point to streaming as one of the categories which is going to be particularly affected by this kind of user-level data, right?
Yeah, it's been, obviously with our ownership of Stream the World and Ando, the streaming space is critically important to Triton. And looking ahead to 2011, a lot of the infrastructure that we've built over the last year, a lot of the investments that we've made have been really under the radar. People haven't known about them, or what they have known is really top level. But really what we've done, if I were to put it in very simple terms, is we're putting an infrastructure in place where you know who each of those listeners are that will be listening to your audio stream. You'll be able to target your advertising to them specifically, and you'll be able to eventually target content to them specifically. It is a completely new way of looking at your broadcast. It's really one-to-one content, one-to-one cast.
Interesting. And I know you indicate that you think digital agencies are finally going to wake up to the existence of radio in 2011. Is that because of initiatives like this? And if so, who is leading that charge?
It is. It really is going to become the digital agencies are going to open their eyes to radio only when radio is using the same language and has the same kind of terminology that they use and play on the same playing field. And for digital agencies, it's all about that kind of behavioral knowledge, that kind of user-level knowledge. So for radio on the streaming space, what we've seen in the past are traditional agencies buying digital in the streaming space. It's a fun little dichotomy. Pandora has their sales force selling display to digital agencies with audio as kind of an added value. We've got traditional advertisers selling audio to traditional agencies with display as kind of added value. It's a completely different environment on both, and the first one who can kind of jump in the other one's pool is the one who's going to be able to take advantage of it. And I think the one, I guess immodestly speaking, I think the one who has the biggest opportunity would be radio. We've got the ability to kind of create that kind of knowledge about our users and present that to digital agencies, and I think it's a compelling sale.
Mm-hmm. And what is the role of location-based services, or how will radio begin to warm to those in 2011?
That's an interesting question. I really was shocked that companies like GoWalla and Foursquare that do that kind of location-based check-in type services completely bypassed radio. It seemed like the most natural fit. I thought it was odd that they started on national instead of local when they're a location-based thing. It just seemed like very odd to me. But I think that's going to turn around in 2011, and I'm not sure exactly where it's going to come from. It may be a new company that comes out and partners with a company like us. It may be a new company that's standalone that comes out and provides white label opportunities for radio. But there's nothing, it's a cliche, but we should be proud of this cliche because it's true. There's really no more local business than radio. And there's nothing more connected to location-based services, whether it's local merchants or whether it's local events or whether it's local landmarks, than radio. We're involved with 4th of July parades. We're involved with local merchants, et cetera, et cetera. So the combination makes total sense. And I really do think that 2011 is where, people's heads get knocked together and they realize that putting the peanut butter and the chocolate together is going to create something special.
Mm-hmm. We talked earlier about Groupon a little bit, and Groupon is valued now for what? Half a billion? What's the valuation on Groupon right now?
I think it's $6 billion.
$6 billion. I was off by $5.5 billion.
It's a little bit. It's a little bit more than you and I make put together, there, Mark.
Well, says you.
I apologize.
Listen, but here's my question. My question is, this is a service that provides to local businesses and local markets discounts to local people. They need mass, right, within those local markets. The local deals only work if a large number of people in the local markets are interested in those deals. If you were to mention to me an idea that at its heart is as sensible for radio, I can't imagine anything more sensible for radio than that. First of all, how in the world can radio not be knee-deep in that space right now already? And
Well,
secondly, with the evaluation of Groupon, what it is, how can radio not be into that space now, regardless?
Well, the answer to the first question is really easy because I discussed it at the Conversions Convention last year, or did discuss it, but saw the people on stage discussing it. The business models are so dramatically different that it's almost unnatural for radio to put their hands around it. To really, I don't know if radio really understands that Groupon goes in with a check in hand and says, "I'm going to give you $5,000." Right now, I'm going to hand you money. You're not going to pay me to advertise. You're not paying me to market. I'm handing you money. I'm paying you, the advertiser, $5,000. You're going to give me $20,000 worth of half-off material. And they're going to, if I'm an advertiser, I'm like, whoa, that's $20,000 worth of material versus $5,000 or $10,000. It's half off. Depends on the margins that Groupon's charging. It's kind of unsure what that is right now, but it's healthy. The bottom line is they're handing a check in, and the advertiser says, wow, they're handing me a check for $5,000. They're going to market it out there, and I might get some new people coming in to try. So that's a cost of acquiring business, and but you know what? The bottom line is, put that all aside. They're handing them a check for $5,000, or $20,000 or $50,000. Okay, so you're a radio person, and you come in and you say, hey, you follow Groupon. Groupon just handed this guy a $5,000 check. He's going to cash it. Maybe he'll make his payroll on Friday. Radio comes in right after and says, hey, we got a great idea for you. And the advertiser's like, okay, great. Tell me about it. Says, you pay us $5,000 and we'll run this schedule that we can't guarantee you how many we're not sure. And then in addition to that, we'll give out these coupons that are half off, and the value you're going to get in the half off is in the spots that we're running. And first of all, it's complicated. Second of all, the value proposition is completely turned around from what Groupon's doing, which is basically handing them money. And the analysis for a business owner is something he can't define later in exchange for a check, which is completely turned around with radio, which is I have to pay out something that's tangible for something I can't define later. I don't think radio realizes how completely turned around the model is with Groupon and how much of a threat that is. Now, I'm very happy that we're getting into this space that we can be there to kind of put radio on a similar playing field. But the bottom line is that when you talk to radio people about Groupon, they talk about things like, oh, we can do half-off deals, or we can do those types of things like Groupon. But the model they use is always completely different than the model that Groupon uses. It's they'll pay us, and then we'll offer half-off. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing by any stretch.
Well, I think
I'll tell you what, Mark. I'm going to pay you $5,000 for this interview, and you can come back to me, and you'll pay me $5,000 for the interview, and it depends on who control, who wants the, who's in charge. Well, the advertiser's in charge.
No, in many ways, what Groupon is doing, instead of putting their money into marketing, right, they're putting their money into the pockets of the business which they're partnering with, right?
Well, that's true, but it's not necessarily true because they have a tremendous number of phone banks where they're just calling advertisers up, which is a hard cost for them. But that's the marketing to advertisers, so there's a hard cost there. But their marketing is the people who get the coupons. These are valuable coupons. It's half, sometimes 75% off on things, and the advertisers are part and parcel of that. They're like,
Well, I think
oh,
the biggest lesson from what you're describing with regard to that is we need to recognize that one business model doesn't fit all when it comes to media in
absolutely.
2011 and beyond, especially when the Patches of the world, the Groupons of the world are invading the very space in which radio has made its fortune, right?
I would be remiss if I didn't say that some radio stations are doing a good job with half off, using the exact model that I was just kind of making light of. It can work. I don't mean to say that it can't work, especially if you have a dedicated sales staff who knows what they're selling, who can take a somewhat complicated sale and turn it into something. That can be done. Entercom's a great example of a company that does a great job with that via email. The problem is that it takes a real commitment to pull that off. Mm-hmm. For Groupon, though, it's as simple as show me the check. Mm-hmm. So it's not an easy place to live, but it's one you have to be.
2011, an all-new year for radio. Digital is going to be that much more important this year. Jim Kerr, Vice President of Strategy for Triton, thanks so much for sharing your predictions for the new year.
Appreciate it. Good work. Thank you.